possible. So here's the thing. What effect do calories have on willpower? They certainly make it much harder to have willpower, right? If you change the hormones, they make it easier. Calories, do they work with your physiology? No, they work against it, right? Because if you decrease calories, what happens? Your metabolism slows down and you get hungry. Why? Because we are built for a feast and famine reality, humans, right? Because food wasn't always around. We didn't have Starbucks and, food fair and whatever, all those kinds of things, different restaurants in every corner. Hormones work with the physiology, okay? They change the physiology so that you can naturally burn fat. Here's the other thing. How many calories does sleep have? And how many calories does stress have? Right? That's a ridiculous question, kind of, right? They don't have any calories. Yet, do they not directly impact how many calories you eat? Right? The reason they do is because guess what sleep does have an effect on? Hormones. Guess what stress does have an effect on? Hormones. The other thing about working from the hormonal perspective is that it impacts different metabolisms. Here's the interesting thing. We can all look at each other and we see we all have different faces. We all have different body shapes. We are all different on the outside. So why does medicine and fitness treat us like we're all the same on the inside? Isn't that a little bit bizarre? We are as different on the inside as we are on the outside. So everyone requires a little bit different approach. We're trying to do that with this class. The rest-based process tries to do that. Do calories work in the long term? Does anyone know what the most popular, what research shows is the best weight loss program in the country? Weight Watchers is what research shows is the best. Okay? Guess what the success rate is for Weight Watchers? It's like 10% for Weight Watchers for a year. You know what they define success as? A loss of 5 to 10% of body weight that is maintained over a year. So for a 160-pound woman, right, that's about 12 pounds in a year. Is that really the body change that most people are seeking, 12 pounds, right? And at 2 years, it goes to 5%. That's the best there is, Weight Watchers. So it's... That's why people are getting the surgeries. That's the comment up here. People get the surgeries. Right, that's right. Because the approach that's currently available out there does not work for the majority of people. Now, if you cut calories, are you burning muscle or fat? Depending on your metabolism, you might burn mostly fat, but most people are going to burn both. Okay? So here's the hormonal model. I just want to show you this really quickly. You don't need to, it's very complicated here, but the point of showing this is there's all these hormones here. And it shows that these things go and talk to all the organs. Here's your digestive tract, your liver, your brain, your fat tissue, your adrenal glands, your muscles. Now, when I say hormones, most people think about what? Testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone, right? However, those things have an impact on where we store body fat, right? We can all see the difference between men and women. But I'm talking about things like insulin, cortisol, leptin, ghrelin, those kinds of things. I'm talking about other hormones. Hormones not only determine whether you burn fat or muscle, but they also determine where on the body fat might be stored or taken from. Estrogen, right, causes fat storage right in these areas, right? Testosterone causes fat to be burned from this area. Cortisol and insulin together cause fat in the middle, right? So I want to just talk about one hormone because it illustrates, and it's one hormone that the metabolic effect workout affects. It's a hormone called leptin. How many people have heard of this hormone, leptin? Okay? So leptin is a hormone that when you eat, right, and you start to gain fat, your fat cells release this hormone. As they get bigger, they release leptin. Your fat cells do. The point of leptin is to go to the brain and say, hey brain, I got a lot of fat on my body, would you please stop eating? And it also goes and tells the thyroid, hey thyroid, I got a lot of fat, please speed up the metabolism so I can burn some of this off. So we would want leptin to be around in high amounts, right? Because it keeps us from thinking we're hungry all the time and it helps us burn fat. Well, have you ever been in a room that has a strong smell? You walk into a room that has a very strong smell. Your first reaction, right? Cover your nose, maybe your eyes water a little bit. But as you stay in that room, what happens? The smell goes away, right? That's what happens with leptin in very high amounts. If it's around in very high amounts for a long period of time, the brain stops listening and the thyroid stops listening. Down south, well, I guess we're not really in the south, but down where I am in North Carolina, there's a place called Golden Corral. Okay? You guys know this place? And you'll go there and you'll see some very big, obese people eating like they're starving. And what I think is I'm just like leptin resistance. That's what that is. They need to be doing metabolic effect or some type of intense exercise. Because what metabolic effect does is it resets leptin for a short period of time. That's why sometimes if you go for a very long run, you come in and you're really hungry. However, you do this kind of activity and you don't want to really eat for a little while. Right? You guys notice that difference? Here's how hormones work. So I don't want you guys, just really quickly, and then we'll get off the hormone topic, but I want you to know metabolic effect works on hormones. I also want you to know that there's no such thing as good and bad hormones. Hormones are like people. So here's a black tie party. If we all go to this party tonight, we're going to eat certain foods, right? We're going to have certain conversation. We're going to drink certain kinds of beverages. However, we go to this toga party, we're going to behave completely differently, right? Wear different things, have different conversation, etc. This is how hormones work. Cortisol. When cortisol is around with testosterone and human growth hormone, it makes us potent fat burners. Okay? So cortisol can be a fat burner or a fat storer depending on other hormones around with it. If cortisol is around with insulin all the time, it makes you store fat. The reason I bring that up is because your stereotypical long size, what it does, it's very helpful to burn calories, and it's a healthy activity. But what it does is it raises cortisol and never gets to the intensity to release growth hormone and testosterone. Again, this is why you want people to rest in this class, because if they just go through this slow motion kind of situation where they're doing aerobic exercise and metabolic effect, they never breach that intensity threshold, which tells the body, release testosterone, release growth hormone, right? That's the difference. They need to get to that point where they have to rest. That's the major difference. Does that make sense? I really want you guys to understand that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So what if an individual, though, has a imbalance?
Workout. We're essentially throwing people in the lion's den. What I mean by that is your natural response to stress in the natural world as a human is if someone comes and tries to steal your food, or something tries to eat you, or you need to catch food in the natural world. Here's what happens. You get this fight or flight response. You guys have heard of that, right? Mm-hmm. You release adrenaline and cortisol and noradrenaline. What's the purpose of those stress hormones? To increase blood sugar, because blood sugar is like high octane jet fuel for the body. It's the thing that lets you run like hell or fight. Okay? Here's an important part of the metabolic effect workout. Then what happens when you start to do intense movement? Sugar burned without oxygen causes lactic acid. All of you have probably thought lactic acid is a bad thing. It's what causes that muscle burning effect. But lactic acid is a hormone. They're starting to find out it is a hormone. And what does it do? It triggers the release of growth hormone and testosterone. That's why on those third rounds that Gary told you about, where I had you pulse and hold and I was really trying to get your muscles to burn, that's why I'm doing it. Because I want that lactic acid. Because I know the more you burn, the more I'm going to generate that growth hormone and testosterone response. Okay? So that's why you're doing that. Does that make sense? And that's also why you want them to rest, right? Because if your muscles are burning like crazy, you can't do that forever. But if you pace yourself and just do aerobics and use light weight, you're never going to get that burn. So your motivation in the class determines how hard you're going to push.